Welcome to the Winner's Playbook with Steve and Josh. Disclaimer: the information contained in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into account your personal circumstances. Please head to the show notes if you wish to book a free 15-minute call to discuss your personal situation.
Welcome back to the Winner's Playbook. Josh, how's your week been this week, mate?
Steve, amazing. It's been a big week. Officially a dad, which is exciting and scary at the exact same time. Little Leon is over a week old already, so time is absolutely flying by. We came home on Tuesday, just settling into home and just trying to get a bit of a routine now down pat. But it's all pretty straightforward because he just simply needs to sleep, eat, and purr, basically. And then he wakes up and screams there and in between.
Yeah.
So there's not a great deal to really think about or worry about, but it's just really trying to find the new routine. And he's been pretty good at night as well, sleeping for most of the night and generally just wakes up once and has a bit of a scream, has a bit of a feed, and then back to sleep. So it's all pretty good thus far, but we're only a week in, so maybe we'll check in after a month and we'll see how I'm feeling at that point in time. And I might be asking for some pointers from you, Steve, at that stage. But that's my life at the moment, just baby. And what about you, Steve? What's
What
happening? I know
you're doing,
you're busy.
mate, I'm holding the fort of the business, which is fine.
You can tell people that. Yeah, we'll let the listeners think
I'll need a
that.
holiday after this, but no, mate, it's been good. It's been busy. Team's going well. We've got the run up to Christmas happening, so it's financial services back in the day at this time of year started to wind down, but really that doesn't happen anymore. It's just full throttle all the way through to the end, and then January starts again, and it's just as busy. So your finger on the pulse at the minute, which is good. But mate, another episode of the Winner's Playbook, and today we're talking about the Barefoot Investor. And I think a lot of people have read this book, but if we dig into the stuff we love and the stuff we don't love out of this book, and funnily enough, we have a lot of conversations with clients around this because it seems to be a lot of clients read this particular book. If we kick it off, mate, what is the Barefoot Investor to start with? Why has it become so popular? Why has that resonated with the community so well around finances?
Yeah, I've read the book quite some time ago, and I've looked at it a lot actually lately because I was in the middle of possibly writing my own book just leading up to the baby arriving, and I've put that on ice. So it's for a lot of reasons it's really resonated with the Australian community. I think the biggest thing apart of it with the Barefoot Investor, it's just a very good basic introduction of financial planning and literacy. Like it hits a lot of basic items right on the head, and the way that the information I think is portrayed is it's very easy to understand for the average Australian as well. Like he's very larrikin-like in the way that he talks about things and just kind of easy to resonate with, I think, with the mass majority of Australians. So look, it's hard to really discredit the book from that perspective. Like it really hits on a lot of the right areas that people need to nail, to set themselves up for a pretty decent future. Of course, what we're going to do in this podcast today, we'll dig down more into the granular detail because although it does cover off a lot of the basic concepts quite well, there's also a lot of areas that it doesn't really suit if you're really trying to get individually advice to your own situation and really tailor what you're doing in your own life. Or reading one book that's kind of like a one size fits all is not generally going to best suit your own situation. So there's definitely some good with it, but if you want to probably optimize and make the most of your financial situation, reading the book and just going off that alone is probably not going to get you there in the most optimal result, which is some of the parts that we're going to dig in. But what have you seen over the years, Steve, with clients and the Barefoot Investor? Because I've had it a ton of times that people have started implementing some of the steps, and for good and the bad as well, for that matter.
Yeah, look, I'd preface this with the fact that, it's good that people are reading stuff to start with and trying to educate themselves. I think that's the first tick. Sure, this, whether it's a Barefoot Investor or any other book, it's always good to see that happening. It is a little bit frustrating when people come in with a preconceived idea to a meeting with what you should do because the Barefoot Investor said it, and you're trying to change that food of thought because that doesn't work like that. Everyone's got their different nuances, and as you just said, whatever's in a particular book sometimes is not suitable for some people and some for others. So I've had a lot of conversation with clients about index funds and a particular superannuation product that he's recommended, which there's a big argument about that. But I think but in general, it's been good to see people reading about financial. We talk about financial literacy a lot on these podcasts, and there's not enough of it. So that helps. But if we dig into the individual aspects of the book, mate, and some of his components, there's a lot there that I do agree with. Some there I really don't agree with. But he's got some very general systems like the bucket system. So the bucket system, as you and I both know, is allocating your cash in certain buckets, they call it, and having that a defined monthly spend that goes in each of those buckets to help you save for the future. And that is a great idea. Clearly that's a general philosophy that people know of. And it's just allocating cash flow in the right way. And so what we do for a job is dig into that into further detail, understand what are the actual goals people are trying to achieve, what stage of life they're on. That's the part that's probably missing slightly, is how much work goes into that, because there's a lot of work that actually goes on behind the scenes. So just calling it a bucket system is the starting point. You then got to dig into, okay, what we're actually trying to do, how much do we need to save, what's the growth patterns look like, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a bit more to it. But in general, that's great. Yeah. He then talks about emergency fund.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I think we spoke about this last week with people having kids.
Yep.
And not having enough in savings to have kids, or if costs go up by 20%, what are they going to do? Clearly, everyone, and we, in terms of our advice and what we do for clients, we always factor in an emergency fund. That can range depending on your circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got significant amount of expenses going out the back door for whatever particular reason, well, clearly we need a bigger emergency fund. Yeah. Or if there's 5 kids or compared to 1 kid that you got to save for, that's going to change things. So again, Great philosophy and great idea. You just got to make sure it's in the best thing for your circumstances and decked out correctly.
Yep.
Now, then he talks about insurances, and having the right level of insurance and getting cheap cover. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You're one of that. But I think, again, with insurances and protecting yourself and your family against any issues, well, then it's going deeper, right? You've got to make sure that the insurances have the right definitions. You've got to make sure you understand that TPD, when you've got total and permanent disability inside super, there's a definition in there called any occupation, which is very restrictive when it comes to payout. So the chance of getting paid out from a super fund on a total and permanent disability is quite low. So it's important, again, to understand the deeper conversation around this that I think sometimes can be missed, but in general, definitely a good topic. Now, parts that I don't agree with is something like getting out of debt quickly or paying down your home loan. Like, that particular topic, it can be completely wrong for a lot of people. If you're trying to build wealth and you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, even 50s and trying to accumulate wealth for the future, well, paying down debt probably isn't going to work. Like, how's that going to build your asset base? So we have many conversations with this, and I have had people come in saying, I've read the Barefoot Investor, and they say I should pay off my home loan like my father told me I should do. Well, that's great. But in 10 years' time, and you've only got your home and no other assets, that's not going to work if you're trying to build an income stream for the future, right?
Yep.
So I think that particular aspect of it can be very, very ill-conceived by a lot of people and be very missed. And it's a conversation I have a lot with clients about. That's great. It's not going to build money. It's not going to build wealth for the future. You have no impact. You can't eat your house. So,
that's true.
Right? Fair call.
Fair call.
So, there's some things there. But then he talks about mindset and lifestyle and finances. Absolutely, you've got to have the right mindset. You've got to get on the mindset journey. Doesn't matter how much money you earn. If you can't have the right mindset and spending habits and getting that zone, makes no difference. Your wage goes up, you keep spending more money, well, it's not going to work. So, there's some aspects there he talks about that are very, very good. So, all I'd say in summary to this, and we'll probably talk about the superannuation products conversation in a minute, but take the bits out of it that are relevant, general advice, absolutely. Use it as an education tool. Don't use it as a financial planning tool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key message. Like, a lot of it is just general advice. Like, again, it's for the masses. It's not actually tailored to your own individual situation. But in a nutshell, I think it is. The book has been a net positive because it's got more eyes on all of these topics. But, you talked about a few of them just then. Like, the bucket system is great, but it's a very simplified approach that he takes to it. And it's very similar to, a lot of people might have heard of the 50-30-20 budgeting rule, which is one that's been around forever, where you take whatever income you've got coming in, 50% goes to your needs, like your expenses that have to be paid, like your mortgage, your bills, etc. And then you take 30% and that goes to your wants. So that's, eating out, restaurants, fun stuff, holidays, whatever it may be. And then you take 20% and you save that, or you're invested. So 50-30-20 budgeting rule. Now, that's a great concept in itself. But then if you look at just simply trying to apply your income always based upon a set percentage, it's not necessarily going to work as your income continues to scale up, because as your income scales up, then you're going to fall into what you were alluding to before of lifestyle creep. Your income keeps on going up, but your lifestyle keeps adjusting up with it. And if you just keep those percentages the same throughout your life and career, as your income's going up, you're going to be allocating more to these other buckets that don't necessarily actually still need more income, which should actually be going more to investment. So again, it's not something that's going to work forever. It's better than having a system in place than not, but it's just definitely worthy of knowing that it's not going to necessarily suit your situation for a very long time. The debt one's also a big one, paying off the house. I think we've spoken about that before, and there's an argument to say that your house is not actually an asset, it's a liability. I get it both ways. If you look at what an asset is doing, well, it's appreciating in value. Your home, you would think, should be appreciating in value, and providing you've got the right asset there, but it doesn't provide you any income, that asset whatsoever, and it's also a bad debt. So there's an argument to say it's actually not that great of an asset to be holding from a wealth perspective, unless your aim is to get to 60 and just be debt free on the home you're living in and live off your super and maybe a pension from the government. If that's what you want, cool. Just nail down and smash down your debt as soon as you can. But for a lot of people these days, it's not exactly the lifestyle that they want. They want to have a bit more flexibility and freedom, and that's where they actually utilize debt to their advantage when they've got a long time horizon to be investing for. And that's where they might look at taking on some debt to go into investment properties, maybe business, sometimes shares as well. So I get there's definitely good meaning behind the getting out of debt. And I think he has a concept of dominoing your debts. So if you've got, your home loan, you've got your HEX, you've got a credit card and a car loan, well, you probably wouldn't go straight to paying down your home loan, because that's probably one of the better debts that you have. It's a longer term on it, probably a lower interest rate, and you probably wouldn't go straight to paying down your HEX or your student debt. But if you've got a car loan or a credit card that's 8, 9, 10+%, particularly if it's a credit card, well, then dominoing those and starting at those bigger, higher interest rate paying debts first, and then knocking down to the point that you hit your mortgage, it's not a bad idea. So there's definitely some really good parts of that. But the real big one that stands out for me, and it always has, and this is the one I always see clients implementing, is they move their super to Host Plus and they go into the balanced index option. Now,
I wasn't going to say the name, but we
got to say the name, because that's something for us as advisors we have to be so careful of. When all the social media that we do, you will never find us giving our opinion and telling you to go into a product. Like, we will never speak on that stuff. So to put an actual product into a book and then recommend a particular investment option is something that blows my mind. Because that influence, I saw the numbers of how many people have bought the book, and it's over 1 million people. Like, it's a lot of people have actually bought this book, and everyone I had then seen had went into that balanced index option. And a lot of people don't understand. I did a video on this just in the last couple of weeks. A balanced investment option is typically one that will hold 70% exposure to shares and property, which are growth assets, and roughly 30% exposure to defensive assets like cash and fixed interest. Now, who does that suit? It definitely suits a certain segment of the community. But if I pick out two segments, if I look at someone, say myself in my 20s, like late 20s, I'm investing, if we just talk superannuation, for the next, say, 30, 40 years, I can't touch my superannuation. If I'm in a balanced investment option, that probably is too conservative for where I'm at in life, because I don't want to have any exposure to cash or bonds or fixed interest at this point in time, because I want a maximum exposure to shares and property, because long term, they're going to give me better results. So for someone who's younger, 20, 30s, or even in their 40s, who can invest for 10 plus years, a balanced option might actually be too conservative. But then on the flip side of it, if you look at retirees, because I also seen a lot of retirees read the book as well, a balanced investment option actually might be too aggressive for their situation, because when you're at retirement, you're in your 60s, you're starting to access your super, having a 70% allocation to the share and property market, that might be too much volatility for you. And the risk that you have there when you're in retirement is, if there is a pullback in the market or the market crashes, which I believe is defined by a 20% or more drop, if the market's dropped 20% or more, which happened during COVID, when you're in a retirement phase, you don't have as much time to make up that loss. And particularly if you're starting to draw down on your investments, which is what you do when you're in the retirement phase, you actually start taking money out of your account. If you're in a too aggressive of an investment option and the markets are crashing and you're selling out of your investments, well, you're actually crystallizing those losses. So if I take those two different ends of the spectrum, young and those in retirement, it's probably not the right investment option. So That's the part that really has always triggered me when it's talked about the actual product and going into one investment option. And then I guess, Steve, you could even talk about, you know, is an index always the best option to going, because it's a very sort of narrow approach in terms of how it invests. But what have you said to clients, Steve, when you've seen them go into it? What's been your education to them around, is that then the best option, and why it may not be?
Yeah, well, I think the whole mindset around this conversation in his book is about fees and low fees. It has the lowest fee.
Yep.
The amount of conversation, and I turn that conversation straight around. It's not about fees; it's got to perform, right?
Yeah.
It's simple fact. You know,
That's it.
if you're paying 0.1% and it doesn't perform, well, you want to be in the one that you pay 1% and it absolutely smashes the lights out, right? So,
Yeah.
you don't mind paying the money if it performs. And for, funnily enough, that's actually that the fund he's recommended had a good year this year. It actually had a dog of a year 2 years ago. So the 3-year average on that particular fund is actually not that good. So you've got to be very careful with taking that type of advice. And well, unfortunately, it probably was advice, and I don't know why it doesn't get picked up by the regulator, to be honest, because
Mm.
that to me is probably borderline advice. But anyway, so yeah, I just say to clients, low fees is great, but if it doesn't do much or it's not in line with how you want to invest, you don't have the options, don't have the transparency, you can't see what you're doing, you don't have good tech behind it. There's so
Yeah.
many things that go into a particular financial product, and that is a financial product. Well, you got to weigh everything up. I have a lot of concerns with some of these funds around transparency. A lot of
Yes.
concerns about what they're invested in. These funds that he's recommended are notorious for not really telling you what they're invested in. Notorious for not being able to move money quickly. Notorious for bad access, both the advisor and the client, advisors in particular. So if you're using an advisor, well, I know for a fact that that particular fund host pass is really, really difficult to deal with in terms from our perspective. So if you're using an advisor, it's really hard. So yeah, there's lots of things that go into setting someone up on platforms and products, and we do a lot of research behind the scenes. And all I'd say is absolutely, you never want to be pigeonholed into just choosing one
Mm.
because someone told you in a book that you should go there.
Yeah, cheap isn't always good. And I always tell that to clients. I say, if you want me to take you to the cheapest fund in Australia, I can do that, but I will put no faith behind the performance of it. And if I
No.
wouldn't put my mum there, I'm not going to recommend it to you. So fees is definitely an important part of the equation, but it shouldn't be the only one, because you nailed it before, Stephen, when you were talking about the actual net return is what's most important. Like, you wouldn't mind paying for a more expensive fund or investment option, but if that's actually providing you a higher net return, because there's gross and net return, and sometimes people get confused with that. So you might see the headline return is 10%, and that's gross before any fees are taken out. But then when you take out the fees on the investment manager, that's your net return. And if your net return is higher in that more expensive fund, you're actually better off. So what you got to be really considering there is what that actual net return looks like, because the difference between getting an extra 1 to 2% for, say, someone in their 20s, 30s, and 40s over that, until retirement, that's going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars, that compounding effect of an extra 1 or 2%. So incredibly important. But before we close out, Steve, he's got this concept of a financial date night. And basically that's where you're catching up with your better half once a month, or it could also be a friend as well. It doesn't naturally, not everyone's got a partner, of course. What do you do, Steve? Do you have a financial date night, or how do you kind of keep everyone on the same page, or how do you do that in your household? Because not everyone's gonna probably want to catch up with their better half once a month and talk finances, because someone's probably not always interested in it.
I guarantee if I proposed to my partner a financial date night, she would go, I'm going out with the girls. Right? So that won't work. Look, I just communicate with my partner about what's happening. We keep it pretty open, but
Yeah,
I think it's just whatever works for your particular circumstances. That wouldn't work in my household, that's for sure. I don't think that would
yeah,
work in a lot of households, to be honest. I think that's where an advisor comes into play. I might be
totally.
biased, but I am an advisor. Yep, clearly it's a caveat there. So, but that's what an advisor's job is, to
Mm.
get the parties together, have the third party do all that, because they're the third party voice. They're not on anyone's side. They can give you up to date information that's relevant to your circumstances. Keep you owning your situation, and do it regularly with your advisor. Step away from that. I think from a date night perspective.
Yeah, and I think the biggest part of it is just having someone to hold you accountable, which is
Yeah.
I think the part that he gets it at. But the part with just doing it with your partner alone, because there's so much emotion that's generally involved in the decision. I was going to say like probably our clients' financial date nights with us.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
typically where it's happening. Like
Just
a
less the
lot of
wine and
clients.
the chocolates. Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of my clients are early stages. Like I speak to them so often. So and a part of that is just that accountability to make sure that we're on track
Mm.
and the plans that we put in place are actually being executed. But again, if we strip out all of that and we just go back to the basics, if you're starting out on your journey, having a friend or whoever it may be and catching up with them regularly to discuss, not a bad thing. But again, you're not going to probably get the most optimal results long term because it's not the stuff you do day in and day out. And just reading any book for that matter, there's no book out there that I've ever read that has the whole solution in it itself. Like
No.
I take a lot of little things from a lot of different books, and that helps me formulate my views on the world. But I've still yet to find a book that kind of hits all of the bits and pieces I want to see from a book. But in saying that, I am going to write a book at one point in time, of which I feel for the financial space in Australia is going to hit on a lot of the things that haven't really been fully addressed in finance books. And then maybe people can tear my book apart and give me some feedback. But that's definitely going to happen in the near future. But it's currently on ice as we speak. So
I'll wait for the first version, mate.
yep, and I'll have you critique it, Steve, and you can give me 5 stars, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, we'll finish it up there, guys. Thanks for tuning in as always. And if you're getting value out of it, 5 stars, Spotify and Apple. Check out the show notes. Check out all the social media channels. As I say all the time, we are everywhere: LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, absolutely everywhere. And also check out the other podcast running, which is the Brokers Lounge, which is the Link Wealth Finance boys, and they're talking all things finance and everything that's going on in that world at the moment, which is a lot with interest rates on the move. And of course, if you want to chat about your personal situation, just jump on the website and you can take a pic of any of the advisors. But until next time, Steve, I've got some dad duties to get to, and I'll speak to you soon, mate.
Good luck. See you, mate.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.